Okay, thank you, and welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast. Today's session is um, every month I hold a community call where folks can come in and ask their questions about what it means to be a spiritual entrepreneur, any sort of blocks or challenges. It's a really, really open format. We gather every Wednesday or the first Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're hearing this and you'd like to join us, please go check out my Instagram page. All the information is in the link in bio, or you can also go to ecommunitycalls.com and sign up and register for the next one. So we've got a lovely group here today. Excited to see what comes up. The first ask I'm going to have for the group is I would like to get just like an energetic temperature of the room. And so if you could either pop into the chat, or you're also welcome to pop open your mic and just share one word of like the energy that you're coming in with. So we'll just start there just to land and ground. Kat, I love that you've got your hand over your chest, just checking in. So we've got Camden, who's feeling a little bit sleepy and foggy. Holding you with that. Zazie is feeling the springtime energy. Oh, yeah. For sure. Reflective. Lovely from Maya. Feeling a little bit sad and disconnected from Daniela. Holding you with that, Danielle. Thank you for sharing. Open and reflective from Christy. Energized and curious. Perfect. Love that y'all are coming exactly as you are. You are welcome exactly as you are. And this is the thing that I love about gathering in community is it allows us to show up and transmute that energy and share that energy if we have an overabundance of whatever, lovely little sparkles we've got. And so for those of us who are feeling a little bit down, that's totally okay. You get to draw on the energy of the group. And those of you who are feeling like you've got a little bit extra to give, then that is the gift that you get to share with the community today. So thank you so much for showing up. So the way that these calls work is I actually don't have a plan. And I love showing up without a plan because what always seems to happen is through inquiry, through our discussion, and I really encourage this to be a bit of a discussion. We get to just sort of see what themes are coming up, and oftentimes somebody will do a share or ask a question, and somebody else in the room will be like, oh, I that's exactly what I needed to hear today. So we're really open with what shows up. I tend to go a bit deep rather than wide. And so oftentimes we have time and space to ask 2 or 3 folks and get really deep into their work. Cat's got a kitty. Please bring your animal familiars. I love them. And so the next little ask from the group is go ahead and type in the chat what is coming up for you, any questions, any challenges or blocks that we can work through. And from there, I will just choose. And then we'll get to play. And also just as a little bit of like a boundary holding, after somebody shares, I'll be really clear by asking them, hey, is it that you want coaching today? Are you wanting witnessing from the group, or are you wanting advice? And advice is oftentimes the last thing that I'll encourage people to take, because whenever we give and receive advice, we want to make sure that it's coming from a really well-regulated state instead of like I want someone to like rescue me and fix me sort of a place. So those are our boundaries for our shares. So go ahead and type away, and I'll give folks a moment to share what's been on their heart. what's been going on in the soul of their business. Okay, Maya's got questions about selling your program from an intuitive and trusting place. Okay, Zazie navigating the difference between needing rest and space and residual fear from previous overstretching. Just give everyone a chance. Zazie, I feel like this is also reflective in the energy that you brought in of springtime, right? Like there's this like natural, like I want to do energy that comes up in springtime, and like what is that balance? I've been feeling that as well in my own personal and professional work. Are those the only two inquiries, or we've got folks typing? Yep, Kat's typing, good. Focusing on somatic nervous system responses to when I am creating and sharing content. Challenge I'm facing is how to let people know I'm open to receiving them as clients. The intuitive, aligned, truthful version of promoting. Yes, that's like a constant question as a spiritual entrepreneur, right? I'll just say that shifts and changes in a dynamic way, in a really evolving way. Camden says, I have an offering open for enrollment this month. First virtual offering for my group. Congratulations. Feeling a lot of conflict around what it means to promote it and how it can reflect my own energy cycle and rhythm, coupled with the need to earn money or income. Sorry, I feel a little bit of a freeze. I feel like Kat and Camden are asking really similar questions there. Love it. Actually, Maya, also pretty similar question. Selling the program from an intuitive and trusting space, right? Well, if that's the theme, let's play with it. Camden, because you have something like specific that we can work with that offering opening up for enrollment this month. Let's play with your question, and then I'll ask like Kat and Maya also to chime in as well. So want to pop open your mic for a second?
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. So Camden's question is, I have an offering open for enrollment this month. It is my first virtual offering from a group, and I'm feeling a lot of conflict around what it means to promote it and how it can reflect my own energy cycle and rhythm. This coupled with the need to earn income, I feel a little bit of a freeze. And so we've had several folks who are asking, like essentially asking questions about how to market, and then also manage and listen to the somatic responses that are coming up in the body. And I actually think that this kind of ties into Zazzy's question earlier of like how to find that need of rest and space and feeling like you might overstretch. And so I feel like there's like a springtime sort of stretchy energy, like underlying all these inquiries. So Camden, can you name the conflict? You say that you're feeling a lot of conflict around promoting it. What is that conflict? More specifically.
Well, after your reflection about the springtime, I do feel the conflict arises from, for me at least, of going through this winter season and really shedding a lot of, I would say, a lot of emotions and a lot of ways of working that no longer served me. So then I have this beautiful offering that was created. And so there was a lot of energy and fertility around it. And I really also tapped into what I really wanted to do. So not only is this my first group offering that's longer than a season, it's also my first group offering where, virtual group offering, I should say, where I'm really touching into the essence of what kind of support I want to offer. The conflict is that process felt really deep,
Mhm.
the process of shedding and then letting it just letting it sit and grow on its own and then kind of flourish and come out, to now the process of it, okay, it's here and I have X amount of days and I would like this amount of people in order to support myself and my family with this amount of income. And the conflict is like, how do I stay in that space somatically where I feel really connected to the offering? I feel really nourished by it. It feels reciprocal. It feels creative and bubbly, but it also feels very calm and grounded. And then when I start thinking of, okay, well, how many times do I need to post? And I've
Mm,
had support working on my messaging. I've had support um, dialing down content and trying to be more concise. And then I do get this freeze state when I start to think about how often and where and in my stories and what it needs to look like,
yeah.
that I actually feel my creative output goes back down.
Okay. Anybody else relate to what Camden is sharing? Yeah, like everyone around here is just nodding, right? So when you say you go into a freeze state, like almost like there's this beautiful yin energy of creation, and you like the word gestate kept coming up for me. Like
Yeah.
you gestated this offering, and you want to be able to share it in a way that feels open and expansive. And then you think about like, oh, the things that I have to do, which is more of the like yang energy, like doing and promoting and getting out there and being seen, it shifts into a free state for you. So can you
Mhm.
share with us somatically what that feels like in your body when you go into a free state? Like where do you feel it in your body, and like what are the physical sensations that come up with it?
Hmm. Well, I would definitely say my throat and my chest start to feel tight, and not tight as if, or I should say, as only if I can't speak, but almost like it's impacting my ability to have full cycles of breath
Mm,
and, and to speak from a place where I'm relaxed, and and then I start to just kind of feel nervous, a little shaky. So then to try to move that energy through, I'll walk around a lot, or I'll start trying to take whatever that is and channel it into a physical activity. And then if it'll maybe subside, but it'll come right back
mhm.
as soon as I go back. So um yeah, and then I might even have like a tense abdomen and get thirsty. So those sort of things come in.
Yeah. So how old is that feeling, Camden?
Hmm. I mean, it feels so familiar as if I've had it from birth, maybe even within
Mm.
the womb, you know? Hmm.
And what is it about being in a freeze state that helped you be safe, whether it was from the womb or from birth?
Hmm. I think this ties into, it helped me be safe because I was unnoticed,
Mm.
or I was tolerated
Mm.
when in that state. Whereas if I were to move at my own pace, either way, slow or super fast, as I am neurodiverse and ADHD, so I can do both,
Yeah.
and I can slide in and out of them really quickly. that was not always tolerated.
Yeah. And so we have to recognize that when we go into free states, it's not actually something that's bad about you or
Mm,
wrong about you.
mm,
It's actually your nervous system. I know I'm speaking to a group of nervous system nerds here. Like it's your nervous system saying, hey, something doesn't feel good, something doesn't feel safe. And
mm,
so this is the most practical, the safest choice that we can make, right? And this is something that I hear from spiritual entrepreneurs all the time of like, I'm scared to be seen. I'm scared to be noticed. And so then you go in and you do all these like marketing plans and you create all this strategy and you have somebody come up with a timeline and yet if we don't address the fact that it actually was not safe for you as an infant to be noticed and to be seen, then all that stuff is going to put you into a freeze state.
mm.
And so this is why I think it's so important that it's important to talk about strategy. It's important to talk about, the ways in which we can market that feels good and conscious and aligned and all of that. And we also have to tend to infant Camden, who
Mhm.
came into this world already noticing if I cry, someone's going to see me, and that's actually not safe for me.
Mhm.
If I have a need and I voice it, however, you voiced it, that need was not going to be met. And
Mhm.
so we need to sit with infant Camden in this situation because it's infant Camden who is driving the bus right now when you go
Yeah,
into,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that brings up a lot. Like, I feel like I'm trying to catch my breath right now.
yeah. And you trying to catch your breath, is that because we're actually seeing you right now?
Probably. Yeah, I would definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not only because I'm being seen, but that same perspective, that same infant child is wondering, can they tolerate it? Then it starts to spread the worry outwards a little bit of not only like, am I tolerated, but how much is it going to affect the other people, which was also a very clear narrative.
Mm,
Um, so it's interesting to me that this is the timeline that I'm tapping into because I would have associated with another like adolescence or something.
yeah. Yeah. So if being seen right now and watching the faces on the screen right now is feeling a little bit overwhelming, you're welcome to close your eyes.
Mhm. Okay.
And let's go and just envision little infant Camden for a moment. Because I don't know about you, but I truly believe that we all come into this world like our perfect little like selves, right? And we end up layering on conditions and narratives and stories and ways to survive. And I feel like when people talk about spiritual awakenings, it's really about how can we unlayer all those conditions and layers of narratives and strategies to survive to get back to that infant version of ourselves who is perfect and whole.
Mhm.
And so we see infant Camden as perfect and whole. Well, I guess I should speak for myself. I see infant Camden as perfect and whole, and I'm just going to invite the folks, give us a little nod if that's how you also feel her. So we've got nods all around the room here. And I'm going to ask you, Camden, as the adult version of you, what did infant Camden need from a secure, well-regulated adult.
I think that that word well regulated is almost at the core of it. And so I needed to be in a home where the adults around me weren't so preoccupied with their own dysregulation and fighting and whatnot. Because I kind of see it as like a play, you know, and going back and forth of like, okay, and looking for a moment to just be a kid and be unregulated and throw a tantrum, you know? So I needed like calmness is
Yeah.
what I needed.
And so we, as a group here, we are all adults working on our own regulation
Mhm.
to varying degrees. Like, we don't always get it perfect, but I know that for myself, it's something that I hold as like a very, very important skill that I'm cultivating every single day.
Okay.
And so, if we can offer infant Camden just some words and some energy, if I could hold little infant Camden for a moment, I would tell her, like, of course you feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
Like, you are such a wise little being who's picking up on the energies and the roles in this family, and of course you feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
And your feelings are not too big. And you are allowed to scream and cry about it, and it's not going to bother me one little bit. And I'm so, so happy to just hold whatever feelings come up for you. And I'm going to invite the group, if there's any words that you would like to share with little baby Camden. And likely we're also speaking to our own inner childs as we share our wisdom. I think I would also invite baby Camden to like explore the rhythms of her own, like her own feelings, her own impulses, because it sounds like you weren't really allowed to do that.
Mhm.
You know, like that we can accept the neurodivergence, not
Mhm.
as something that's wrong about you, but that's something that's a gift about you. Because how much shit do you get done when you're like in that mode, right?
Yeah.
And then also like being able to slow down too. Like, that's a gift that not everybody has.
It's interesting to me what's coming up is that, you know, I do parts work and I do work where we go back and look at stories or, you know, beliefs that were put into our lives by our environment or the people around us. And it's so interesting to be feeling both energies kind of like running through me right now of how I have processed all of this at my age now in the past few years. But then going back that far, just when you said, you know, it's okay to be uncomfortable, that very statement was just, it was like a corset was relieved, you know, just like open up. Um, the acknowledgement that there is uncomfortableness.
Yeah,
Mhm,
of course there was discomfort.
mhm,
Like infants are just like little sponges picking up on energy. Like they don't have all their senses yet, you know?
mhm.
So the only thing they can rely on is energy and emotion. So Kat shared, you are free to fully express yourself in a way that feels best to your nervous system and a beautiful, complex neurodivergent brain.
Mm, thank you.
Daniela says, you're just a baby, and as every baby, you deserve unconditional love and affection. Crying is okay, and feeling is okay. Christy says, the world needs you just as you are. Oh my God, amen to that.
Mhm,
Maya says, you are safe to be who you are.
mhm.
So I just want to check in with you and your body and feel into that feeling that you were saying of like the tightness in the throat. Like, how is that at this moment?
Like I said, just that initial statement felt like an invitation um, to kind of come a little undone with that grip, you know, of whatever it was. And then to be able to ease into a situation and tap into this and discuss it, it has provided a lot of relaxation. Um, there's still like a little bit of
Of course.
something there because it's
Yeah.
obviously like an it's a difficult topic, but um yeah, that gripping has been released.
Yeah. And so
Mm,
when you think about, you've got a plan for your social media, like, hey, I'm just going to throw numbers out. I'm going to post 4 times this week.
mhm,
You start feeling that gripping sensation again in your throat. Like that's an invitation because that's baby Camden who is speaking in that
mm,
moment through your body. And is saying it doesn't feel safe to be seen. It doesn't feel safe to show up and share. Like it doesn't feel safe to ask for my needs to be met. And so like you can do this in those moments of that gripping, of like holding your inner baby Camden and like letting her know like actually it is okay to be seen. You are
mhm.
not too much. You are allowed to be uncomfortable with this, and we can do this in regulation.
I think it's so important to be able to share our work while we're regulated
Absolutely.
as opposed to just create
Mhm.
balanced or regulated or feeling inspired, and then there's that cooling off period and we look at our work and we're or words or a poem or whatever we're going to put out there. And then, yeah. So in that cooling off period where the creative energy comes down and we do feel that connection to our work and we feel that release of like, okay, this is something I really wanted to get out and now it's out and that feels amazing. And then you start to go back up
Mhm.
to, you know, that space of sharing. Would you say that it's in that space where I can't pre-regulate, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It's about widening that window of tolerance, right?
I love that. Yeah.
It's about stretching into those moments, and so going at again, I'm gonna use, what was it? Somebody said something along the lines of, like, you get to do it at the pace that feels best to your nervous system, right?
Mhm.
It's about, like, you wouldn't go into a yoga class and think like, okay, first time I'm going to a yoga class, I'm gonna get into a stretch or a split, right? It's about stretching and finding those moments to stretch over and over and over again and finding out what that like edge feels like for you and then backing off so that you feel safe. Finding that edge again, backing off, finding that edge again and backing off, right? And that's gonna look really different during different times in your business, right? And I would
Mm,
say that, like, even as you start putting stuff out, it's not always going to land. Like, that's the reality that, like, I think a lot of business coaches don't talk about is sometimes shit doesn't land with people. And that is still incredibly valuable information, right? And so can you take those moments where it's like, "Oh, that didn't quite land," or like, "I thought that post was gonna do really great and, you know, didn't get a ton of responses from it," or, "Oh my god, I poured my heart and soul into this program and only had a couple people sign up." Like, there's still it doesn't mean that the program was bad, it means that there was still information that needed to be, like, processed and integrated in order for that to be put out into the world. So,
mm,
as an example, before I did business coaching, I did a lot of relationship coaching, and I put out a program. I was, like, so stoked on my program. It was called the Heart Lab,
mm,
and it was, like, the nerdiest of nerdy, like, relationship programs ever. I wanted to, um I really wanted to tie in attachment theory and science and nervous system work with, like, Eastern Taoist philosophy.
mhm.
I put it out there and I only had 2 people sign up. It was like I spent hours and hours and hours working on the curriculum. It was a good program. Like, that's the thing is, like, the program was excellent, and only 2 people signed up, and I was devastated, of course, for the first, like, couple of weeks, and then when I went back to it and started looking at it again, I, like, started being like, "Oh, I wasn't actually speaking to the people in such a way that they could see the value of the program," right?
Mm,
So then I did a lot of market research, was able to, like, come up with, um, like, ways to actually, like, speak to people in the marketing, and it sold out every single time after that. So
wow.
it has nothing to do with the program. Like, I think that a lot of times people attach, like, significance to, like, "Oh, that means my program is shit." It just means that your marketing needs tweaking sometimes. Or it means that we need to figure out a way to communicate better and to connect better with your audience. And so, yeah, so I'm gonna answer some of these questions here. Maya asked if it was more of a skill building. So yes and no. There was similar to Camden's story. I also had a family where it was unsafe to be seen. And so I wasn't actually sharing the like heart of the like program, right? And then the skill building was more about some of the stuff that I teach in conscious marketing now, which is if you go out there and you start having conversations with people, they will actually tell you exactly how to market to them. Meaning, if they are talking about the problems and the challenges that they're having with whatever it is that you want to provide, use their words. You know, the way that I think of it is like you want to be folding in a lot of your point A, meaning like this is where people are starting at who are going to be interested in working with you, and then sprinkle in some of your point Bs. But when you talk about the point As, use their language. You
Mm,
want it to feel like you are inside their head, and oftentimes just using their language helps them feel connected, right? And that's basic, like, mindful communication skills. Like, when you're in a conflict with somebody, one of the first things that you know, that mindful communication will teach you is, like, can you just mirror that person? Just
mm,
mirroring that person brings so much regulation to them, right?
yeah.
And so, like, we did it a little bit with Camden here of, like, "Hey, like, I see that you felt uncomfortable as a baby, and just naming the thing that is coming up. And so, like, I think that when a lot of times people get really caught up in, I want to get them here, and they talk more about the point B, like, you need to have a good balance of both. And point B can be a little bit more in your language in terms of like how you see the world, what your perspectives are. But point A needs to be in the language of your people. And you can't really get that language without going out there and having conversations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it feels, again, it just feels a little bit more spacious, and it feels, that feels more realistic to me, that sort of engagement, because also it's about not only now I'm free to express myself. I do, feel that most of the time. And then you're waiting for the engagement. So it's not just, it's not so much the visibility sometimes or the posting. It's the being regulated, the pace of it, not feeling like I'm doing something outside of when I'm feeling integrity and aligned within. And then it's the engagement, right? And so that, I think, also, as I was listening to you talk, was perhaps also kind of bringing that part of me up, and that inner baby and infant, because it's like, well, what's the engagement going to look like? Am I going to be met with silence? And then how does my body interpret silence when I share so this is really helpful to put it into that lens, as opposed to just like, I'm giving something and I'm getting nothing back.
And the reality is that, like, in the online marketing space, you are going to get a lot of silence. Like, sometimes it does, like, even for me, after years of doing this, sometimes it does feel like I'm like yelling out into the ethers and like not getting anything back. And specifically, like, it felt like that with the podcast. Like, I would pour my heart and soul into the podcast, and like, I have friends who have podcasts, and they're like, oh yeah, people are emailing me about how it's like landing for them, and like sharing their stuff in the stories, and I wasn't getting a ton of that. And that's actually why I started doing these community calls, is because I I have to take the responsibility as the business owner to try to figure out how to get people more engaged, right? And so instead of just being there and being like, oh, like, why, you know, and then I started getting feedback actually on my connection calls with people who want to work with me. Like, I binged your podcast, and that's why I'm sitting here talking to you now. And it's like, oh, that person never said a single thing to me. I've never seen their name in my life, and they were out there listening. And so that's another part of the conversation, is like, especially for folks who are just at the start of their like marketing journey, is relationships take time to build. And so, like, I think that there's this, like, I don't know. I don't know very many people who have like put their thing out and then like immediately like turned it into like a six-figure income. The more common story that I see is it took work, it took time, it took like a sustainable pace of growth. And over that period of time, they were in conversation or finding ways to have conversations with their audience the whole way through. Because that's really what it is. It's your marketing is just relationship building, you know? And so I have folks who are joining BAM in this next cycle who've told me that they've been like watching my stuff for like a year and a half. And so that seed was planted a year and a half ago. And then it's like, this is the right time that they're joining, right? Because that was the right time for them. I can't force someone to be ready when I want them to be ready, which would have been like a year ago, right? And so it's about finding that rhythm, that pace. And I think that that's why what you're speaking of, Camden, of like being in regulation is so important, because if I'm out of regulation and I'm going out there and being like, you guys need to join my programs, and like it comes with this like super needy energy, it's like a complete turn off, right? And so, like the inner work that y'all are doing around your nervous systems, yes, it's good for you. It's good for, I think life generally, but also it's good for your business because it brings in people in a way that they feel that regulation. They aren't going to get the projection of like, oh my God, please, 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 like on them. Is that making sense?
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting how everybody's um unregulated state manifests differently. Mine is more
Yeah.
like, if you want, okay, yeah, and so I just kind of start to do this like back away dance.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for just listening and hearing me. And yeah, I'm really grateful to being able to have this conversation with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Means
Me
a lot.
too. Yeah. Just want to like see. Yeah, Kat, I was exactly going to ask questions or shares or what's coming up for y'all as we were working through Camden and stuff. So, Kat, go ahead.
Thanks, Camden, for sharing your experience. Obviously, very reflective of my own. And just toward the end here, I was doing my like reflecting as I'm listening and realizing like one of the things that I've been experiencing is how, okay, hold on. My brain wants to back up. Neurodiversity, it wants to back up. It started a little bit earlier. So I was trying to overcome the whole like put myself out there and also doing trauma healing. So like literally just expressing myself without fear was something that I was working on. And so a year and a half ago, I grabbed a TikTok account and I knew nobody on it. And I just decided that I would use that as my space to literally just practice using my voice, and that I wasn't there to try to like get likes. I wasn't there to try to get clients. I was just there to like put my fucking voice on the internet and like my face. Pardon me for swearing. But like it took a while, until I actually was able to post from a regulated place. And it wasn't every time that I posted. And sometimes I would be really insecure before I posted. And so it wasn't while I was filming, but it was while I was like editing. And so I just really watched like when that was coming up for me. And so now I'm at this place where I feel really aligned with my somatic experience around posting. And so I know not to, like, I know that it's not right for me to try to create content, even if I just had a great idea while I'm feeling the emptiness of my bank account and my soul, or like the desperation to be noticed and valued. It's like, don't create content from that place. The ideas are valuable, so snag them, write them down, but don't try to create the content from that place. And so I'm really in that space, but then it's like, how do I maintain this when I'm consistently fighting the idea that I'm supposed to post super regularly? I feel like having this concept of posting a few times a week or having consistency so that you have visibility is actually like a source of distress for
Yeah.
me, because I'm like, that doesn't feel natural to me. And I've done a lot of thinking around it, and I'm thinking about my own self as a user of social media spaces. Like, if I'm not seeing the content, it didn't matter to me. So how often am I actually checking in, and what am I doing when I check in? Like, where am I going? And am I checking people's stories? Am I like, ooh, I want to see what Kat's been posting, and so I go specifically to your page because I'm interested in what you're doing. If I want to find your programs, I know exactly where to go. So I'm like, that's my experience as a user. So how do I reconcile that with also being a content creator and trying to sell my products, and like showing up in that space of like not having the desperation for likes, and the sort of understanding of what you were saying, Kat, where it's like, you don't know people are listening because everybody feels insecure about being seen. So people aren't liking your commenting because they're having their own experience, right? So it's like, it's not that they're not engaged, but I just like, it's all just so confusing. And from the perspective of like wanting to create marketing that is both regulating for me, like I'm doing it in a regulated state, and when it hits people, I'm not dysregulating them. There's a part of me that's like, this whole push to get likes, get seen, and forcing people to engage, or like inviting people to engage, like we're literally triggering people by asking them to engage sometimes, right? Like they don't want to, and then they won't, and they'll pull back. And so it's such a complicated dance. I feel like the only way forward is to be like, when do I feel like posting? What am I like feeling confident and in my heart about that I want to share, and create the content then and put it out there, and just hope in the sense that, you know, the right people are going to log in online and see it in their feed when they're supposed to, or that when they want to come find me, there'll be things there for them to see. And it kind of goes along the lines of, I used to do a lot of community engagement in the nonprofit sector. And, you know, it's a nonprofit sector, and you're trying to get people to volunteer and come out and do all this stuff for free and like participate and then give you money. And it's really hard to get bums in seats. And so we would have this like approach of like, whoever's in the room is who's supposed to be here, and then just like accept that, instead of wanting to fill your event to capacity or get X amount of, you know, dollars. It's just like, there's a piece and like accepting what is. But how do you sell yourself? Like I'm like, I still live in capitalism, so I still have to like pay my bills.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
came out way more confused than I meant to. I apologize.
I can follow the threads. The first thing that I want to acknowledge is the wisdom and the intuitive hit that you had to like keep movement to get yourself out of the freeze state. So like when you're talking about like opening up the TikTok account, I just want to like highlight that before we get into your main question. Because this is something that my horse trainer actually like talked to me about. We're going to talk about horses for just a second, and then and then go back to marketing. So I came up against like a river when I was out riding with my horse trainer a month or so ago, and my horse just froze, like just could not move, would not like even consider like doing anything around this water. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? And she was like, you got to just keep her feet moving. And in horse world, that means like you keep their head moving, and then they'll figure out and take that first step. And she said that when a horse is moving their feet, they're problem solving. And so I think humans and human nervous systems are the same. If we're moving our feet, we're problem solving. And so that is kind of how I see your TikTok journey of like, you just got your feet moving. You know, it felt dysregulating at first. It was scary. You put yourself out there. You put no attachment to it. Like, I didn't care how that horse crossed the river. Like, we needed to get over the river to get where we were going. But it was just like, keep your feet moving. And working with clients, the hardest states to like work with is when people are in a freeze response. And so like when folks are in a freeze response, it's just any kind of movement, and it's not going to feel safe. It's not going to feel 100% safe all the time. And so I just want to like highlight and note that, because I think that that's going to land for somebody out there who's like in a freeze state. The main question that you're asking of like, and I think that this is partially like this overarching thing in social media where people are saying you have to post consistently, you have to post like, I don't know, I feel like these people are getting paid by Instagram, because like that's like Instagram strategy is to like get people on posting consistently all the time. I found that when I post consistently and when I post out of regulation, I get less engagement. Um, and that's just my own personal anecdote because I'm not creating as much, I'm creating more content, but I'm creating less quality content. And I don't know about you, but like the people that I follow produce quality content, and that's why I'm there. I don't want the like throwaway, like random dancing video or the like, here's, a picture of my cinnamon bun. Like, I want people who are like, I mean, you can post about your cinnamon bun, but I want it to relate to whatever it is that's on your heart, like tell me a story about the cinnamon bun that like matters. So what I've found, and you can take this or leave this because I think we're going into advice realm here, is my energy tends to flow like in spurts. It's not consistent. And this is also how I engage with people socially. I'm a little bit of a hermit, and then I come out and I'm like, yeah, I love you. And then like I have to like go decompress. That's like even with my best friends, is like they know that I go into hermit cat mode. And so when I'm in that like upswing of like having ideas and having quality things, I will create the content and then bank it. And so then I have things to post later on. The other thing is I've been doing this long enough that I have posts from last year that are still relevant this year. And so then I recycle some of that stuff. Because there's people entering your audience all the time, And so you might have shared something 6 months ago that was super relevant and got a lot of engagement. Throw it up 6 months from now and like see how that continues to land with people. I'm curious, what is your energy like? Like I said, I'm like a hermit, and then I come out and like hang out with my friends and I'm like super engaged, and then like go back into hermit mode. What are you like?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I call it turtling.
Yeah.
But yeah, very similar. And I think I do thrive. Like I used to speak in front of physical audiences of people. And so I do love being in that space, but I've also been traumatized for being in that space. And so I think that's part of why I turtle, actually, because I'm like, oh, I put myself out there just a bit too much. And now I need to like rein it in because something's gonna happen. So there's definitely a fear of like rejection and abandonment based on, past experiences that pulls that back, less of a like introvert, extrovert, I need to recharge my batteries thing. It's like a trauma, a freeze response, basically, and like flight. But I think generally I like when I'm not sucked into the trauma programming, it's like how I show up as a space creator and a space holder. And like I really love asking questions, and I like sharing information that helps people shift their perspective and their understanding of things. Like when I worked in the nonprofit sector, it was a lot around social innovation and like social development and justice and engagement and different ways of thinking about that stuff. So like systems level perspectives, and I get so fucking jazzed in that space. Like I know because people have told me that I am like this inspirational sort of spearhead type energy. And anytime I've ever been told that, there's a part of me that's like, yes, this is where I belong. And then there's a part of me that's like, holy crap, when is the hammer going to drop on me? And when is something going to happen and someone's going to sabotage this? And like, it's happened. And the same pattern has occurred in different situations in this lifetime. Like, and I'm sure past ones, but
So
yeah.
when the camera drops, what happens?
usually I get like ostracized or alienated out of where I'm at. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing. Like even right now, I'm very aware of like the self-critic, or there's like this judgment coming in that's like, you can't call yourself a spearhead. You can't say that you're like this visionary, inspirational, motivational energy, even though I have the receipts. It's like that it just comes in and I'm like, I can't say that. Not even in this space. Like it's like, why can't I just step into that power and that owning that, like my presence inside of my being has a magnetic quality to it, which I think would work in social media, like how the conscious marketing idea. But being allowed to be that, there's all these hoops to jump through, right? And like, you know, you need to have credibility, and you know, that needs to be designed by the system, and you don't have like university degrees and you haven't done fellowships, so like you can't call yourself, like you can't take this space, you don't belong here. And it's
Oh
just
my
like,
goodness. I have so many things to say about credibility.
oh god. So yeah, there's like systemic things,
Yeah.
external systemic things, and internal system things from like intergenerational trauma and personal lived life trauma that's like at play. And it's just like, it's such big work.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to like show that work also as part of the marketing. Like I feel like that's important to me, to show my work. But then I'm going into a space like Instagram, which is where it really terrifies me, and being like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm kind of screwed up, and like, you know, trying to heal these aspects of myself, build a business that's anti-capitalist while living in a capitalist, you know, like society. What do I, like, I don't know how people are going to receive that. I'm just kind of hoping that maybe there's people out there equally as.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is you are not for everybody.
No.
And like we can say that and you can logically and intellectually understand that, and your body still says, yeah, but I want to belong. And like when you are in your truth, when you are in the space of like actually showing up, there are going to be people who say, fuck that. Like you can't be that big. And they are speaking from their own wounding. So I get called out, I would say every other month, for talking about capitalism and making money, because I too have to live within a capitalistic system, right? And to me, it always goes back to your own integrity. And that is what I always fall back on. That is what I always encourage my clients to go back to when it feels like the world is out to get you and you need to have this, that, or this other credential, right? I'm not saying that credentials are bad. I'm not saying that degrees are bad. I am incredibly grateful for the degrees that I have. And the work that you speak of like holding space and embodying leadership, that's not something that you learn from going to school. Where does that come from for you?
Well, I love that you said that's not something that you learn in school. You cannot teach it. But it's interesting how many people are out there in leadership programs learning the sort of structural stuff of leadership. But anyways, the question was why, where does that come from?
What is the space holding? Where does the leadership qualities, where does that come from for you?
I'm just going to check in for 1 second and ask my body. My heart is pounding so hard that my hand is like pushing, like it's pushing against my hand. I think it comes from there. I think it comes from my heart. I think it comes from an understanding of that struggle that you mentioned about like wanting to be unique but also belong. and want to get like be your unique expression, but also belong. And like a deep inner knowing of what's possible if we honor the wisdom in the room and the uniqueness in the room, wherever that room is. That it's a deep, deep inner knowing that that is what we need in this world. It's like a space where people can bring their energy and their ideas and their passions, just any place where people can do that and bring it together, and actually co-create and collaborate community. Lots of these sounds, but like the idea that community is possible. And that's definitely my heart screaming that.
And that is the wisdom that you've embodied through doing your own work of holding space for yourself, holding space for others, creating safe spaces for other people to express who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm not saying that you can't go and get a leadership training, like of course you can. And you can only take people so far as you've gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the reason why I like was like, oh my God, I have so many things to say about like credentialing is because in traditional medicines, like our grandmothers and our great-great-grandmothers and our great-great-great-grandmothers didn't need to have a university to like accredit them to be a leader and a matriarch in their society. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just ran into this with a client of mine who is a Native American woman, has studied, you know, herbalism through various leaders in her community, and she wrote a book on Native American um, herbalism. Like she like literally published a book about Native herbalism.
Mm-hmm.
And she was going through this like imposter syndrome because she didn't go through a university training to be like licensed as an herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, did your grandmother need to fucking do that? Like why do we have these systems where we have to, you know, jump through these hoops and like get our license? Like, you know, I look at my master's degree training in acupuncture and like I feel like half of that curriculum could be thrown out the window because it was like unnecessary and it was just there to like get the hours met in order to like move people through a particular program that was ascribed by a system that is not run by acupuncturists.
Mm-hmm.
So like to me, when I hear you speak about leadership and your heart just like opened up, like I don't know if anybody else like felt that, like as you were talking, like the expansion of your heart, like we got to see a piece of that. Like that is the integrity that you hold to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there will be people who poke at that.
Or I'm terrified of it.
Yeah.
Like, how are you doing this? I've had people like actually angry publicly with me. Like, what are you doing? Like, not trusting the feeling because they feel it, but they don't understand it. And it's like, oh, hi, welcome to the space I'm holding. You can come on in if you want. Like,
And so you can choose to hold space for those people. Sometimes I do, even when I get called out, I'll sort of like see if there's an opening to like have a little bit of dialogue and a little bit of conversation. And if it's a no, then it's like, hey, like the block button and the unfollow button's right there. Like you don't need, like, they're not entitled to your space,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you have an open door if you have a public Instagram account, but that doesn't mean that they get to come in and like smear shit on the walls,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're talking about too is just for me, it's ringing the bells on my healing journey of like developing those personal boundaries to just know when it isn't, because that's the other aspect of it is this thing that's in my heart, this knowing says that everyone can be there. And it's like, because that is also so deeply in my integrity, the fawn response that I can master is like shocking how much I can, the capacity I have to forgive, the capacity I have to understand and like hold perspectives of other people and like understand where they're coming from, to the degree that like I could lose myself. And so that's part of it. It's like, how do I become this energy for myself that is so focused on holding that outward space and like creating that, but then also like protect me like at the core of it, without centering myself somehow in
So
the
everyone
thing.
can be in your space, but the difference there is not everyone is entitled to your space.
Yeah.
And by allowing people to be entitled to your space, you create an unsafe environment for the other people who like actually would benefit from hearing your message.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a good perspective. Thank you.
I mean, like imagine if on my Instagram page, I left everybody who tried to call me out, tried to call me a capitalist pig, like folks who just want to like create drama. If I left them all in there, how that would not be a regulated space for you all to be in,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so often in those situations, I'll DM them and be like, hey, like, read your comment, would love to hear like what's going on for you and why it felt like you needed to leave that comment on my wall.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes folks are like, able to like work through and process and like do a little bit of work with me. I don't do coaching in my DMs, but I'm able to like get them to a place of like a bit of understanding. Most of the time they're just there to make drama.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they get blocked because it's not a safe place for the rest of my audience. And to me, that is the most integral thing, is the trust that I have with my community. And if I do not have the discernment to say yes and no to the people who come in, then it feels unsafe for you all.
Mm-hmm. So interesting, the awareness that I'm having as you're saying that, and like the spaces of working in the nonprofit sector where you can't behave like that. I'm sorry, but like you have to. And you can't even like firing a volunteer who's literally toxic and damaging the organization is so difficult to even do because of the philosophy, I will say, and the paradigm that it exists within the system. And so again, back to the idea of the boundaries, it's like so awesome that you've given me this perspective, because I'm not in that space anymore. And I can reassure my body that I get to choose who comes in and out of the spaces that I'm now beginning to create, and like assert the boundaries of not only myself, but the space on behalf of the people in it. And thank you for that nugget, because again, it's external systems and internal systems that's at play here. And so like that external system of like everyone has to be welcomed, it's like that exists. And I was stuck inside it for a decade. So good to be out. But
You get to choose.
yeah, I get to choose.
Choose.
Thank you.
Of course. Just want to open it up to the rest of the folks and see how things are landing. If there's like a little piggyback question that you want to ask, we've got about 13 more minutes. So want to see if that feels like an open space for y'all. And I appreciate all the comments that you guys have been following through on the in the chat. It's been a busy, supportive chat. Yeah.
I think I just want to point out for myself my own realization I've had recently about when we go into fawn and freeze. Like I've been in go, go, go for so long.
Yes.
And it's like, it's so funny if I can go into the analogy of when I work with my clients on dieting, when they're all in and they're like restricting and they're no sugar and fasting and they're like really in. It's not sustainable. And then they swing the entire other end of the pendulum, and it's like mindless eating, boredom, eating, just like feeling like, what's the point? That's me in my business. So I was like all in, and then I went to the other end, and I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah.
And I wasn't posting as often. I was second guessing. I was overthinking. And now I'm just realizing, like, for me to get out of that is like my nervous system trusts me to just go and not overthink and just post imperfectly. I know it's different for like how you were mentioning, you're like, I'd rather put quality out there, and I'm bringing value no matter what. It's just, I tend to think this is not valuable enough. What's the point? Or I'm not saying this right. So it's almost like for me to feel safe, I'm just putting it out there, and like, that's how I'm feeling. So, but I think it's really reassuring to hear from you when you say some things just don't land. And it's like nice to hear that it's not just like my mindset blocks, or is my chakras not aligned and nothing's like landing because there's something within my own soul, or is it just sometimes like we're very pragmatic and that's okay. Like it's sometimes it just doesn't work or it doesn't land, and we don't have to blame ourselves. I think that's where I'm always wondering, I'm like, am I not doing this right? And so when I asked about, or just like seeing perspectives of what you were sharing about, and this is because you came from Lindsay's account, your friend Lindsay, and how she was recently talking about how to F the algorithm. Like, I don't worry about the algorithm. I post whenever, because I realized when I follow the algorithm, it still doesn't do anything. I'm just like posting whenever. My views are tanked, like they're at their lowest low of all time. But I'm still showing up and I'm posting, And I think with Lindsay, when it spurred that, oh my goodness, like, how can I be more trusting around my business and see it as its own entity, and see it as like I can connect with it intuitively, like I do when I teach my clients about food and trusting their body, and not following the strategy or the rhythm, like, or allowing their body to guide them. That's how I want to connect it to my business. And that's where I'm feeling like, where do I start? Tuning into my body. Okay. But I'm kind of like, not sure if you have any advice or, just perspective around that.
I love the nuance that you're bringing into it, because if somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm basically in a freeze state because I'm feeling like I need to be a perfectionist about everything that I put out there, I would be like, just put out garbage. Like,
yeah, that's me overcoming my perfectionism.
That's the horse version, or the human version of like, get your horse's feet moving, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be clumsy, it's gonna be uncomfortable, like, just get your feet moving, right? And so if you relate it back to what you just shared about your clients, somebody who's in a free state where they're like mindless eating now and just like in a complete shut down free state around food because they've overcompensated by doing too much dieting, too much like, calorie counting, whatever that looks like. What would you say to that person to get them to start moving towards that center balance point that you're speaking of like, fuck the algorithm?
I think it is about taking that one step, that one small step that feels safe for them. It could just be, for example, if they're in the freeze mode and they just want to be on their couch and eating chips. It's like, can I move from the couch to the yoga mat on the floor? Just roll that out and start with that, and start with like something calming and stretching, and to help, stretch your body, something, even if it's just laying on the ground. And I think it kind of helps to even just the initiation of that can help get the ball rolling. I think just also like bringing awareness to their body, like when they're in that free state, how does it show up in their body? I think I've been trying to get better at that too.
Yeah. I would also say that there's a lot of people who are scared of the pendulum swing. I don't know if you see this in your
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes in myself. I don't want to go back to how I was operating before. It got me where it helped in the beginning to get like my business in a great place. And I actually really think that
yes.
part of me that was in survival, fight or flight mode, it's almost like putting that work, that effort in the beginning has allowed me to then be in a place where I'm like, okay, now I got to find my balance. But I am scared of that. Like there is a bit, my heart starts racing, my feet start, I start shaking my feet when I notice I'm like, there's a deadline coming up. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I got to get this email out before 5 p.m. or something. It's this panic.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of energy out of my body. Yeah.
And so, like, I think understanding that there is this pendulum between the two, like, set points of like overdoing and freezing. And so, what can it look like to find that center point? Sometimes we just have to accept that we might go into that overdoing swing a little bit.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh, that's what my body feels like when I go into that space. Okay, so that means I need to slow it down a little bit. And maybe the pendulum swing doesn't go quite as far. And then like being able to like sort of navigate that ability to like go back and forth if you need to. And so like what you're speaking of with your clients of like, can you just get your body moving in some form or another, right? So I would say the same thing for you is like, can you just type out a post and maybe you don't even post it, like it's just something that you like do for yourself, and to put that up and see how that lands. And if you do fall into that like perfectionist, like, oh, it needs to be like exactly like the thing, and this is going to be the thing that unlocks, and is going to go viral and is going to bring in all the clients, like just start posting whatever to get your feet moving. I think the idea is like get your feet moving however clumsy and awkward that looks.
It's been getting easier back doing that. I think it's because like I realized though, I got some advice on my content, and the copywriter, she doesn't write your copy. Like I don't want someone else to write copy for me. It's more like educating me on copywriting skills and marketing and stuff. And she's like, your work is powerful. It's great on the how-to and the education of what you do, but you're not showing people how to get from point A to point B. Like you want to fill in the gap and you want to show them that you're the solution. And I'm seeing that you're not creating enough empathy and connection. And I was like, oh crap, like I'm in teacher mode, which has put me in friend zone in a way. And that's where I feel like my program, I'm having a hard time selling it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I would say go and start talking to people in your audience, and you might even throw up a poll or something like that, and like start asking them about what challenges they have in the space that they are in right now. Because what I'm hearing is that you go into teacher mode, and so you're telling them the methods and the like ways in which to like look at their diet, and like you're kind of doing the like point B and then like the methodology. You're not giving them enough of the like point A. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think it's like, yeah, I'm not talking to them on the point A of like their pain points.
Yeah.
Right. But so example is they come to me when I'm like, hey, what are you struggling with? They're like, I have a lot of erratic, compulsive eating. Like I just want something right now and it's causing me to gain weight. And I hate how my body looks because of it. So I know that weight loss is important to them, even though I'm anti-diet culture. I'm also not somebody who talks about weight loss. Like I'm not like, hey, join my program, you're going to lose 10 pounds. I don't go with it that way, because I want them to take the focus away from weight loss and focus on their behaviors, their habits, their emotional regulation, their mindset around food and dieting and their body. So when I ask them, like, what are you dealing with? They're like, I'm emotionally eating. So I put a post to show how to stop emotionally eating.
I would even take it a step back.
Yeah.
Don't show them how to stop emotionally eating. Like, meet them where they're at right now and talk about what it feels like when you are emotionally eating.
Wow. Yeah.
Because that's the empathy piece that's missing.
They don't need to know how. They want to know
They want to
that
know.
someone understands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like initially, like Kat says, how to tell if you're emotionally eating or not. Like initially what people want to feel when they're in your space is, do you understand me? And like it's a really tender, like vulnerable thing to share with somebody. Hey, like I'm emotionally eating. And so like imagine if I came to you and I was like, Maya, I'm struggling with my emotional eating, and you're like, you just go straight to the like, this is how you fix it. You know, it's kind of like that boyfriend who like just wants to fix the problem instead of like slowing down and like being like, well, how do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah.
And so like slow it down and like really reflect back to people that you understand what it feels like when they have emotional eating habits.
This is so different than what we've just picked up on. It's like, give them value. Okay. I'm going to show you how to fix your emotional eating. That's value.
And you know, that's not to say like you don't put those posts up, because I think
Right.
those too, but like make sure there's a good mix of it.
That's what the copywriter was saying. She's like, it's not that your stuff, you should get rid of the stuff that you're teaching. It's just, you need way more
Yeah.
connection and empathy posts. And I'm like, what is that? Like, I know how to do it in client calls one-on-one because they're telling me
Yeah.
their unique experience. And when I'm on that call,
You
it's
can
like,
meet
explain to me what that feels like.
Yeah, exactly. It's no different. Kat saying, how do they understand what the experience really is that you are here to support them with? Vulnerable to admit to yourself too. Yeah, of course.
And I share like my own experiences
Yeah.
of body image and when I used to just like hover over the sink and eat mindlessly, and until I was like in pain. Like those things are things that I share in my newsletters and stuff. Maybe because it's more intimate, I don't really share it. Maybe I should share it on my Instagram, but I feel like it's more of like the tighter knit community in my newsletter. I share that. But yeah.
So how's
Cool.
that happening for y'all? Yeah.
It's a huge like revelation though for me, because I'm like, that's how you sell,
Yeah.
you know?
By like empathizing. I mean, it's marketing is no different from like building a conscious relationship.
Yeah.
All the things that you do to be kind and compassionate to your friends, like that's really what your audience is wanting and craving from you too. So like be in conversation with them. Yeah. Well, my dears, that means that we are right up on time. For anybody who's listening, I hope that this was really helpful for you as well. We've got some really, really brave, vulnerable folks who came on and just shared their heart and souls here. And so thank you so much for everyone who was able to come to our live recording. We do these every month, the first Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And this is a little bit of a snippet of how I like to coach in my group coaching calls. Like, this is really no different. The group coaching calls tend to be a little bit smaller, and so folks get a little bit more intimate space. But if this feels good to you and you'd like to check out Business Alchemist Mentorship, then that can be found on businessalchemistmentorship.com. And we'll see you guys next month.